We all face moments that feel like a kind of exile. A sudden career setback can isolate you. A wave of public criticism can feel like a modern form of shame. These experiences test our core, leaving us wondering how to endure them without breaking. The ancient Stoics faced far worse, from banishment to imprisonment, yet they emerged with their dignity not just intact, but strengthened. Seneca once wrote that a wise man builds a citadel for himself that no storm can demolish. By the end of this exploration, you will possess a timeless toolkit of mental strategies to navigate any adversity with that same unshakable calm. We will walk with three guides who lived these principles: Seneca the statesman, Musonius Rufus the teacher, and Epictetus the former slave. How did they transform their deepest sufferings into their greatest strength? What does it truly mean to possess an inner fortress that no external event can ever destroy? The first and most fundamental Stoic lesson is learning to distinguish between what is within our power and what is not. This principle, known as the Dichotomy of Control, is the bedrock of Stoic resilience. Think of it as an anchor in a storm. While the wind and waves rage around you, the anchor holds your ship firm, preventing it from being dashed against the rocks. Your judgments, your desires, your actions, these are your anchor. Everything else, from your reputation to your health, even the body you inhabit, is subject to forces beyond your command. This is the unshakable truth that allowed a figure like Musonius Rufus to face banishment with undisturbed calm. Exiled to a barren island by a paranoid emperor, he did not waste his spirit railing against the injustice of his sentence, a thing outside his control. Instead, he focused his energy on what he could command, his own response. He began teaching philosophy to the very guards assigned to watch him, turning his prison into a classroom. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, opens his manual for living, the Enchiridion, with this very point. He writes, "Some things are up to us, and some are not up to us. Our opinions are up to us, our impulses, our desires, our aversions. Whatever is not our own doing is not up to us. This is not a passive resignation, but an active focusing of your energy." Consider a modern person agonizing over a job interview. They cannot control the other candidates, the mood of the interviewer, or the final decision. These are external events, the stormy seas. What they can control is their preparation, their research, their effort, and the attitude they bring into the room. That focused effort is their anchor. By straining to control what is not ours, we achieve only frustration and anxiety. What is one situation causing you anxiety right now, and what part of it is truly within your control? What if you could not just endure your hardships, but actively love them? This is the radical challenge of Amor Fati, the Stoic practice of loving one's fate. It is the ultimate form of acceptance, a deliberate decision to embrace every event, especially the difficult ones, as necessary and even beneficial for your life's path. This is not merely putting up with adversity. It is about turning an obstacle into fuel, transforming a story of victimhood into a narrative of profound personal agency. For someone enduring public disgrace, this shift is everything. It moves the battle from the outer world of reputation to the inner world of character, a realm where you hold absolute sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who faced constant betrayal and plague, wrote in his private meditations, "A fig tree, if it is to do its work in the world, must produce figs." And a human being, to do their work, must produce a certain character. Your character is not forged in comfort. It is shaped in the fire of difficulty, and that fire has a purpose. Consider Seneca's Exile. When the Emperor Claudius banished him to the remote island of Corsica, Seneca could have let bitterness consume him. Instead, he chose to love his fate. He saw the isolation not as a punishment, but as a rare opportunity for uninterrupted philosophical study and writing. It was during this period of enforced solitude that some of his most profound works took shape. His exile became the very thing that solidified his legacy. The setback was the setup for a greater contribution. So look back on your own journey. Can you identify a past difficulty that, in hindsight, became a necessary part of your growth? That painful ending that led to a better beginning, that rejection that steered you toward your true path. Amor Fati asks you to see that not as a consolation prize, but as the essential, purposeful ingredient it always was. Let's pull back the camera far back and look at our lives from a cosmic perspective. Picture the Earth not as a map, but as that pale blue dot hanging in the vast, empty blackness of space. On that dot are billions of people, and among them you. Now focus in on your city, your street, the room you are in. See that moment of public embarrassment, that wave of online shame, that sting of rejection. From this distant vantage point, how significant does it truly appear? The Stoics called this mental exercise the view from above, and it is a powerful tool for dissolving the artificial gravity of our personal dramas. It grants you the one thing hardship often steals: objectivity. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this. He wrote, "Remember that all of this has happened before and will happen again, the same plot from beginning to end and the same staging." He was reflecting on the vast cycles of time, showing how even an emperor's troubles were a tiny, repeating part of a much grander story. Apply this to a modern scenario. You post something online and it receives a wave of negative comments. The immediate feeling is one of heat, of contraction, as if this digital event is the most important thing happening in the world. Now activate the view from above. See the servers humming in a data center, the light of screens on faces across the globe, the sheer volume of information flowing every second. Your post and the reactions to it are one minuscule data point in this immense flow. This is not to say your feelings are invalid, but to give you the space to see them in their true proportion. How might your current problem look from the perspective of your whole life, or even from space? That difficult conversation, that professional setback, shrinks to a manageable size when viewed against the backdrop of your entire journey. This cosmic perspective is the ultimate antidote to the prison of the present moment, freeing you to respond with dignity rather than react with panic. Your reputation is not in your control, but your character is. This stark truth forces a fundamental separation between the person you know yourself to be and the labels the world tries to pin on you. The Stoics practiced a form of cognitive detachment, learning to see public opinion, job titles, and social status as mere external costumes that could be put on or taken off without touching the core self within. Consider Cato the Younger, a Roman senator famous for his unyielding integrity. His political enemies slandered him relentlessly, dragging his name through the mud in public speeches and graffiti. Yet historical accounts describe a man whose inner peace remained completely undisturbed. He understood that their words were a reflection of their own character, not his. His worth was not up for a public vote, it was a settled matter in his own soul. Epictetus offers a direct exercise for this. He said, "If someone calls you a fool, do not be troubled by it. Instead, go home and ask yourself if the accusation is true. If it is, then you have learned something valuable and can work to improve. If it is not, then you can dismiss it with a quiet laugh, knowing the label does not fit." The power remains entirely with you to accept or reject the judgment. Imagine a high-powered executive who has built their entire identity around their job title. When a corporate merger strips that title away, their world collapses. The Stoic shift would not be to pretend it does not hurt, but to actively decouple their self-worth from that specific role. They would ask, was I only a vice president, or was I a person of diligence, creativity, and resilience who happened to work as a vice president? Those inner qualities do not vanish with the business card. They are portable, they are permanent, and they form the true source of your value. What label or title do you cling to that, if stripped away, would make you question your worth? Is it your professional rank, your role as a parent, your social media follower count? Identifying that attachment is the first step toward reclaiming the freedom that comes from knowing your worth is an internal creation, utterly unassailable by external events. There is a fortress that no army can breach and no tyrant can conquer. The Stoics called this the Inner Citadel, an unassailable sanctuary of the mind where your true self resides, forever free from the chaos of the outside world. This was not a metaphor for them, but a psychological reality, a space they cultivated with rigorous practice. It became a vital refuge for thinkers like Boethius, who, while imprisoned and awaiting execution, wrote his masterpiece, The Consolation of Philosophy, a dialogue with a personified lady philosophy that occurred entirely within the safety of his own mind. He built his citadel so well that his physical cell could not contain his spirit. The construction of this inner fortress relies on two essential practices: introspection and self-dialogue. Introspection is the quiet inventory of your own judgments and reactions, asking yourself why a particular insult stings or why a specific loss feels so devastating. Self-dialogue is the constant, gentle conversation you have with yourself, reinforcing your principles and questioning your initial, often faulty, impressions. Marcus Aurelius captured this practice perfectly when he wrote, "People look for retreats for themselves in the country, by the coast, or in the hills. But this is altogether unphilosophical when you can at any moment retreat into your own mind. No retreat is more peaceful or less crowded than your own soul." Consider a political dissident held in solitary confinement, stripped of every external comfort, every human face, every marker of time. Their survival often hinges on this very stoic capacity. They retreat into the citadel of their mind, rehearsing cherished memories, composing mental letters to loved ones, or rigorously debating philosophical ideas with themselves. Their body is captive, but their inner freedom remains absolute because they have chosen to fortify the one place their captors cannot reach. This is the ultimate application of the Stoic dichotomy of control. The outer world of prison bars and isolation is not theirs to command, but the inner world of their thoughts, values, and interpretations remains entirely their own sovereign territory. So where is your inner citadel, and how can you strengthen its walls today? The Stoics did not merely hope for the best, they rationally prepared for the worst. This deliberate practice, known as Premeditatio Malorum or the Premeditation of Evils, was their psychological training ground for the very exiles and imprisonments we have been exploring. It is the act of vividly imagining the loss of what you value most, not to invite pessimism, but to systematically rob future hardship of its greatest weapon, the element of surprise. By walking through a feared event in your mind before it occurs, you expose its terrors as manageable and, in doing so, build an incredible resilience to life's inevitable blows. Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to spend some days in the meanest style of living, using a coarse blanket and eating hard bread. Why, he explained, let the pallet be a real one, and the coarse cloak and the bread of the poorest quality. The point is to greet poverty without fear and to master that fortune which threatens you. This is not about fostering dread, but about cultivating a profound sense of security that comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes. Imagine a respected public figure, secure in their career and social standing. A Stoic would periodically practice premeditatio by mentally rehearsing the loss of that very status. They would visualize the news breaking, the whispers in the corridors, the turning away of former allies. They would feel the initial sting, and then they would move beyond it, picturing their life continuing with a quieter purpose, perhaps in writing or teaching, their core values and character completely intact. By repeatedly visiting this scenario in their mind, they drain the potential real event of its power to shock or paralyze. The hardship, when and if it arrives, feels familiar, almost rehearsed, and can be met not with panic but with a calm, practiced response. What is one feared event in your own life, professional or personal, that you can calmly premeditate this week to reduce its emotional charge over you? Every thought that enters your mind presents itself as the absolute truth, a final verdict on reality. The Stoic discipline of assent is the vigilant gatekeeper standing at the door of your perception, the crucial practice of pausing to ask, is this impression accurate or am I being deceived? In moments of public shaming or sudden disgrace, this single skill becomes your most powerful defense against a tidal wave of emotional judgment. It is the difference between being swept away by the initial sting of an insult and standing firm in your understanding of what is real. Epictetus, who knew the cruelty of the world firsthand, laid out the mechanism with stunning clarity. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things but by the views which they take of them." When you are publicly criticized, the event itself is just words or actions. The devastation you feel comes entirely from your quick, unquestioning assent to the impression that these words have defined or destroyed you. The practice is to insert a moment of space between the impression and your reaction, to examine the thought before you let it in. Imagine waking up to a negative news headline about yourself, one filled with half-truths and insinuations. Your first raw impression might scream, "My reputation is ruined. Everyone believes this. My career is over." The undisciplined mind immediately assents, treating this catastrophic story as fact, and plunges into despair. The mind trained in the discipline of assent stops. It holds that initial impression at arm's length and begins its interrogation. Is this headline the full and complete truth? Is the source reliable? Does the opinion of this one writer or this one online mob actually define my entire worth? By scrutinizing the impression, you reclaim your power. You realize you are not upset by the event, but by your unchecked judgment of the event. What is a recent impression you accepted as truth that, upon a calmer examination, might have been flawed or incomplete? Comfort can be the very trap that makes us fragile. The Stoics believed that by occasionally choosing discomfort, we inoculate ourselves against future suffering. This practice, known as voluntary discomfort, is a form of psychological strength training. It is the deliberate decision to step away from ease in order to prove to your deepest self that you can endure far more than you think. For a person facing the prospect of exile or imprisonment, this was not an abstract idea but a vital preparation. They were building a kind of muscle memory for the soul, teaching it to remain calm and functional even when conditions were harsh. The Roman statesman Cato the Younger was famous for this. Despite his immense wealth and status, he often walked barefoot through Rome in all weather, wore only a simple tunic without a tunic underneath, and ate plain food. He was not punishing himself, he was demonstrating that his happiness was independent of these external comforts, that he could lose them all and still be himself. The philosopher Musonius Rufus, who taught Epictetus, championed this idea for all people. He said, "How can a person become temperate if he only knows luxury? How can he become brave if he has only experienced comfort? Hard training is essential for a virtuous soul." The goal is to break the automatic association between hardship and misery, to discover a well of inner resourcefulness that does not depend on perfect circumstances. A modern application of this is as simple as taking a cold shower. The initial shock is a tiny, controlled dose of adversity. By choosing to stay under the water and breathe through the discomfort, you are not just building willpower. You are sending a powerful message to your psyche that you are the kind of person who can handle unpleasant sensations without crumbling. Another powerful practice is a voluntary digital detox, deliberately setting aside your phone for a day to prove that your sense of peace is not held hostage by a constant stream of notifications. These small acts are like deposits in your resilience bank, ready to be drawn upon when a real crisis arrives. What small, voluntary discomfort can you introduce into your week to build your resilience muscle? Stoicism teaches that freedom is often found not in acquisition but in reduction. The more you need to be happy, the more vulnerable you become to fortune's whims. This is why the Stoics and their philosophical cousins, the Cynics, deliberately pared down their lives to the barest essentials. They understood that every desire you nurture is a new chain you forge for yourself, a fresh point where the world can grab hold and inflict suffering. The legendary Diogenes, living in his tub and owning nothing but a cloak and a wooden bowl, demonstrated this with radical clarity. When he saw a child drinking water from his hands, he threw away his bowl, realizing he had possessed an item he did not truly need. His wealth was his lack of want. Seneca, despite his own immense riches, saw the danger clearly. He wrote that wealth is the slave of a wise man and the master of a fool. A person who is chained to their possessions lives in constant anxiety, always fearing loss, always seeking more. But the person who has learned to be content with little carries their freedom with them, whether they walk through a palace or a prison cell. Imagine someone who loses their home and all their belongings in a natural disaster. After the initial shock and grief, many survivors report a strange, unexpected sense of clarity. Stripped of the constant burden of managing and protecting their things, they discover a profound liberation. Their identity is no longer tied to their address or their furniture. Their value is measured in their resilience, their connection to family, their simple capacity to endure and begin again. This is the Stoic secret to surviving any deprivation. By willingly embracing simplicity, you are not preparing for a life of misery. You are building an inner economy so robust that no external loss can bankrupt your peace. What is one possession or comfort you could live without, and what freedom would that give you? Your greatest adversary might secretly be your most valuable instructor. This Stoic perspective asks you to perform a radical mental flip, to see the person causing you pain not as a villain to resent, but as the necessary grit that polishes your character to a brilliant shine. It is a reframing that actively disarms the twin poisons of hatred and self-pity, transforming a personal conflict into a training ground for your soul. Marcus Aurelius, who dealt with treacherous senators and incompetent officials daily, wrote in his private journal, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." And elsewhere he noted, "A better person is made from a better opponent." He was reminding himself that the unjust man in his path was not an obstacle to his peace, but the very means of achieving it. The friction was the point. Historical accounts tell of philosophers like Dio Chrysostom, who was banished by the Emperor Domitian. Instead of spending his exile cursing the tyrant, Dio traveled and honed his oratory skills among common people, ultimately returning to Rome as a wiser and more effective voice. The emperor, in his cruelty, had unintentionally provided the perfect conditions for the philosopher's growth. He was the unwitting trainer who assigned the most difficult drills. So look at the dynamics in your own life. who consistently tests your patience, challenges your assumptions, or provokes your anger, that difficult colleague, that critical family member, that online detractor. What if their behavior is not a random affliction, but a specific curriculum designed to teach you patience, to strengthen your forgiveness, or to solidify your own values by showing you what you refuse to become? Who in your life acts as this unwitting teacher, offering you daily lessons in a class you never signed up for, but one that is essential for your graduation into true inner freedom? Anxiety lives in the future and regret lives in the past. The present moment, however, is a sanctuary of pure action, a space where our true power is always available. For a prisoner facing a decade-long sentence, this focus on the now was not a spiritual luxury. It was a vital survival mechanism. To constantly dwell on the lost comforts of home or the terrifying uncertainty of a future release date would be a form of mental self-destruction. Their survival depended on narrowing their world to the immediate task, the next breath, the single patch of sunlight on the cell floor. This is the core of Stoic mindfulness, a disciplined anchoring in what is actually happening, not what we fear might happen. Seneca perfectly diagnosed our common ailment when he wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. We are tormented not by our present circumstances, but by the dreadful futures we paint in our minds and the painful pasts we refuse to release." We add the weight of tomorrow's phantom burden to the manageable load of today. Imagine you are in a deeply stressful meeting, feeling the heat of criticism and the pressure to perform. Your mind might race ahead, catastrophizing about a failed project, or dart backward, replaying a clumsy comment you made 5 minutes ago. In that storm, your only point of control is the present. You can consciously drop the mental movies and bring your full attention to the simple, physical act of breathing. Feel the air filling your lungs, the solidity of the chair beneath you, the sensation of your feet on the floor. The content of the meeting is still there, but your relationship to it shifts. You are no longer drowning in the story of potential failure. You are simply responding, one breath at a time, to what is directly in front of you. This is the sanctuary. For the next minute, can you anchor your attention entirely in the present, letting go of what was or what might be? Your personal suffering can become a source of strength for others. The Stoics found that the surest path to maintaining their own dignity was to anchor themselves in a sense of duty, a purpose that extended far beyond their individual plight. When external validation was stripped away, when their names were dragged through the mud, they turned inward to a simple, unshakable question: what is my role as a human being? Answering this question by continuing to serve, even from a prison cell or a barren island, transformed their personal tragedy into a lasting public good. Seneca, writing his profound letters from exile, was not merely passing the time. He was performing a duty, offering consolation and guidance to his friend Lucilius, and through him to all of us who would read his words 2,000 years later. His isolation became a conduit for connection. Epictetus, who taught philosophy to anyone who would listen, put it with typical bluntness. He said, "What are you? A human being. If you see yourself as a human being, you will see that as a human being your duty is to act for the common good. Your purpose is not tied to your job title or your social standing. It is rooted in your fundamental capacity to contribute something of value, no matter how small your stage may seem." Consider the modern whistleblower who uncovers a dangerous truth and is then subjected to a torrent of public attacks, character assassination, and professional isolation. What sustains them through that firestorm is rarely a desire for fame, which has turned to ash, but a profound sense of duty to a greater good, to the truth itself, or to the protection of the public. Their personal sacrifice becomes an act of service. This is the ultimate alchemy of Stoic resilience. It asks you to look past the immediate pain of your circumstance and ask, what can I build here? Who can I help from this exact position? Your core duty might be to your family, to your art, to your community, or to a set of principles you refuse to betray. What is that core duty or service for you, the one that can sustain you when all external validation disappears? A prison cell can become a study, and exile can be transformed into a library. Some of the most enduring works of Stoic philosophy were not composed in peaceful academies, but in the depths of personal crisis. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private meditations not from a palace throne room, but on military campaigns, surrounded by the stresses of war and betrayal. His writings were a lifeline, a way to process the immense pressure of his role and reaffirm his principles in the face of chaos. This act of writing is far more than mere note-taking. It is a profound therapeutic practice. When you put pen to paper, you are doing something revolutionary. You are taking the swirling storm of internal emotion, the confusion and the shame, and giving it a structured form outside of yourself. You assert control over your own narrative, refusing to let the story be written solely by your critics or your circumstances. Seneca, during his long exile on the island of Corsica, did not succumb to silence. He became incredibly prolific, writing lengthy philosophical letters and essays. Through these writings, he maintained a connection to the world that had cast him out, offering guidance and friendship across the sea. He was actively building his legacy with the very time that his punishment was meant to waste, turning isolation into a platform. This practice directly combats the corrosive isolation of shame. Shame wants you to hide in silence, to believe your experience is uniquely terrible and must be concealed. Writing shatters that illusion. It brings your struggles into the light of your own rational mind, where they can be examined, understood, and ultimately mastered. The modern equivalent of this powerful Stoic tool is a simple journal. You do not need to be a philosopher or a writer to benefit. In the midst of a personal crisis, the act of journaling creates a safe, private space to untangle your thoughts. It allows you to have a conversation with yourself, to question your first, raw impressions, and to search for the deeper wisdom hidden within the difficulty. It is a way to document your own growth, to see how far you have come when future challenges arise. So consider this: if you were to write a letter to your future self about your current challenge, what essential wisdom would you impart? What would you want that future self to remember about your strength, your values, and the purpose you found in this very moment of struggle? The river of time flows in only one direction, and everything it touches is swept along in its current. The Stoics saw this not as a tragedy, but as the fundamental law of existence. The nature of the world is change. To fight against this truth is to struggle against the current of a river, exhausting yourself in a battle you cannot win. But to accept it is to find a profound peace, even as the landscape of your life is reshaped before your eyes. This acceptance of impermanence is the final piece of the puzzle, the wisdom that allows you to face the loss of status, freedom, or home not as a personal failure, but as part of a universal, natural cycle. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this constantly, writing, "Time is like a river made up of the events which happen, and its current is strong. No sooner does a thing appear than it is swept away, and another comes in its place and will be swept away too." Think of a powerful political figure at the peak of their influence, celebrated and feared in equal measure. Their fall from grace seems shocking and unique, a scandal that dominates the news. But from the Stoic perspective, this is simply the river of time at work. Their rise was a change, and their fall is another. The applause of the crowd and the sting of disgrace are two sides of the same coin of impermanence, both destined to be replaced by something new. When we internalize this, the personal sting of loss diminishes. The job title you held for a decade, the social circle that defined you, the home you built a life within, all were ever only on loan from the universe, temporary arrangements in an endless process of rearrangement. Your suffering does not come from the change itself, but from your attachment to the way things were. So ask yourself this pivotal question. What change are you currently resisting that, if accepted, would bring you greater peace? Is it a shifting career path, an evolving relationship, or the simple, undeniable fact of your own aging? To accept the flow is not to give up, but to finally start swimming with the current, discovering a resilience that is as fluid and enduring as the river itself. A picnic cancelled by rain feels like a genuine disappointment. We label the weather as bad, the day as ruined, yet the rain itself is just water falling from the sky. It is neither good nor evil. Its moral value is assigned entirely by us, based on our plans and preferences. This is the core of a revolutionary Stoic idea that events in the world are fundamentally neutral. They only gain the power to harm or help us through the judgments we attach to them. For a Roman statesman ripped from his home and sent to a desolate island, this mental discipline was not a philosophical game. It was the difference between descending into despair and ascending to a new purpose. Exile was not inherently a punishment. It was a blank slate. By withholding the immediate, gut-level judgment of disaster, the Stoic exile could see the situation for what it was, a change of location. And within that change lay a rare opportunity, uninterrupted time for study, for writing, for deepening one's understanding of life away from the distractions and corruptions of the city. They reframed the entire experience, from a sentence being served to a project being undertaken. Epictetus, who knew suffering intimately, laid out the mechanism with stunning clarity. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. The event is just an event. The pain comes from the story we instantly tell ourselves about it, a story we mistake for reality." The practice is to pause before that story solidifies. When you receive a painful piece of news, like a job rejection, the initial impression screams failure. The disciplined mind interrupts that narrative. It asks, is this event truly catastrophic, or have I simply judged it that way? Could it be a redirection, a sign that a different path awaits, one better suited to your true skills? This cognitive shift does not erase the feeling, but it robs it of its ultimate authority over your peace. Can you identify one event you currently view as bad and brainstorm a single neutral or even positive interpretation for it? The final judge must always reside within you. When the roar of the crowd turns to a chorus of condemnation, your only true refuge is a private court of opinion you have built inside your own mind. The Stoics understood that public shame loses its power the moment you stop seeking validation from the very people shaming you. This is the practice of living in accordance with your own reasoned principles, a commitment so deep that the approval or disapproval of the external mob becomes as irrelevant as the weather. Your inner court is not ruled by emotion or ego, but by a clear set of virtues you have chosen for yourself. Integrity is the name we give to this unbreakable alignment between your private values and your public actions, no matter the cost. Seneca captured this self-possession perfectly when he advised, "Let all your efforts be directed to something, let it keep that end in view." It's not that you please no one, but that you are not acting to please anyone except your own well-defined conscience. Consider an artist who creates a deeply personal piece of work, only to have it met with scathing reviews and public mockery. The undisciplined artist might crumble, altering their next work to win back favor, diluting their unique vision until it becomes a hollow echo of popular taste. The artist who has cultivated their inner court hears the criticism, assesses it calmly against their own artistic standards, and then makes a sovereign decision. They might find a valid point for growth, or they might dismiss the noise entirely, trusting that their vision has a value that transcends today's trending opinions. Their creative integrity remains intact because their worth was never on the auction block to begin with. So ask yourself this: whose opinion matters most to you, and is that person's standard truly aligned with your own deepest virtues? A powerful technique for reclaiming your mental space is to strip the story and see the bare facts. When shame or loss hits, our minds instantly weave a dramatic narrative around the event, layering it with judgments and catastrophic predictions. The Stoic practice of objective description cuts through this noise by forcing you to report what happened with the sterile precision of a courtroom transcript. You move from a story charged with feeling to a simple list of observable events, creating a crucial buffer between the external occurrence and your internal reaction. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to see things as they are in themselves, unadorned by the opinions and fears we project onto them. Take the emotionally loaded statement, "I was publicly humiliated." Now describe it objectively. A group of people expressed disapproval of my actions. The first version feels like a verdict on your entire being. The second is merely a report of behavior, both yours and theirs. It does not deny the event occurred, but it completely reframes its meaning and, more importantly, its power over you. The sting of humiliation depends entirely on the story you are telling yourself about what those expressions of disapproval mean. By dissolving that story into its basic components, you drain the emotion from the wound. Your reputation is not ruined. A specific number of people in a specific place at a specific time reacted in a specific way. This is the factual ground on which you can stand, a place of clarity from which you can choose your response with dignity rather than being overwhelmed by a reaction. What current worry is dominating your thoughts? Try writing down a single sentence that describes only the bare, observable facts of the situation, free from any emotional labels or dire predictions. Your personal struggle is not a random, meaningless accident. The Stoics found their ultimate solace in a concept they called logos, a rational and divine principle that weaves through the entire cosmos, giving order and purpose to everything that happens. Trusting in this universal reason allowed them to see their own suffering, however brutal, as a necessary thread in a vast and beautiful tapestry whose full design they could not always perceive from their limited vantage point. Even in his prison cell, Boethius wrote of this profound trust, arguing that the universe is governed by a divine reason that cannot be swayed by human tears or petitions, a force that ultimately orders all things for good. This belief transforms hardship from a personal punishment into a contribution to a perfect, if mysterious, whole. The Stoic philosopher Cleans expressed this surrender beautifully in his hymn to Zeus, writing, "Lead me, O Zeus, and thou, O destiny, to that place you have assigned me. I will follow without hesitation. Though I have become a man who does wrong, I will still follow without resentment. To accept your fate in this way is to align your individual will with the cosmic will, to stop fighting the current of the river and instead understand that you are the river, flowing exactly as it must." Think of a single thread in an immense tapestry. From its own perspective, the thread might be pulled taut, dipped in dark dye, or woven into a confusing pattern. It cannot see the majestic scene it is helping to create: the face of a hero, the slope of a mountain, the brilliance of a sunrise. Your life, with all its pains and joys, is that thread. The moments that feel most chaotic and unjust are often the very ones that give depth, contrast, and meaning to the final image. Can you find a way to trust that your current struggle has a place in a larger, meaningful pattern, even if you cannot see the weaver's full design? The mind does not rule from a throne of pure thought, but is deeply intertwined with the vessel that carries it. Stoic philosophers insisted on a sound mind in a sound body, not for athletic glory, but because physical discipline is the most direct training ground for the will. They understood that by consciously enduring minor physical discomforts, you build the mental muscle to withstand life's major hardships. When the body screams with hunger, shivers with cold, or aches with fatigue, the untrained mind rushes to obey its command. The Stoic practice of voluntary physical rigor is a deliberate rebellion against this tyranny, proving that the body's complaints are just signals, not commands that the disciplined mind must follow. The teacher Musonius Rufus was adamant about this, arguing that philosophy must be practiced with the body, not just the intellect. How can a person learn courage if they only ever experience perfect comfort? How can they develop endurance if they flee from the slightest hardship? He saw physical training as essential for a virtuous soul. Epictetus, with his characteristically sharp wit, framed the relationship perfectly. He reminded his students that while you must care for your body, you must also remember it is merely a little ass, a beast of burden that serves your higher purpose. You are the driver of the cart, not the donkey itself. When the donkey brays for more food or balks at a steep hill, the wise driver does not abandon the journey, but gently and firmly guides it forward. Your own body is that donkey. Its desires for constant comfort, its protests against effort are its braying. Your will is the driver. The modern applications of this are everywhere. It is the conscious choice to take a long walk in brisk weather instead of staying indoors. It is the decision to skip a meal and feel the genuine but manageable sensation of hunger, observing it with curiosity rather than panic. It is the cold shower that jolts the system, not as a punishment, but as a daily reminder that you can handle a shock to your comfort and emerge more alert and alive on the other side. These are not acts of self-punishment, but small, repeated declarations of independence from your own physical whims. What is one way you can gently test your physical comfort zone to build this same mental fortitude in the coming week? The last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This powerful idea, expressed by the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl from the depths of a Nazi concentration camp, is the ultimate expression of Stoic resilience. Frankl, who drew direct inspiration from Stoic philosophy, observed that while the gods could strip a person of everything, their family, their home, even their clothes and hair, they could never seize the final inner liberty to decide how that suffering would shape them. This is the unbreachable frontier of your own mind. There is a critical distinction between a reaction and a response. A reaction is automatic, a raw emotional reflex often filled with panic or bitterness. A response, however, is a chosen action, a deliberate move guided by reason and character. It is the space between a stimulus and your answer, and in that space lies your entire freedom. The former slave Epictetus, who knew the feel of actual chains, put it perfectly. He said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." His body could be bound, but his mind remained eternally unchained. Imagine two employees in the same company, both called into the office and handed an identical pink slip. The first person reacts with immediate fury. They storm out, slam doors, and spend the following weeks consumed by resentment, telling anyone who will listen about the profound injustice they have suffered. Their entire identity becomes the story of the person who was wronged. The second person, receiving the same news, feels the same initial shock and fear. But they pause, they take a breath and enter that space of freedom. Their response is different. After processing the disappointment, they choose to see it as a forced opportunity, a nudge to finally pursue a career path they had only ever daydreamed about. They used the severance package to retrain, to network in a new industry, and within a year they have built a more fulfilling life. The external event was identical. The outcome was determined entirely by the freedom each person exercised in their attitude. Your power does not lie in controlling every event, but in commanding the meaning you assign to it. In your most challenging situation, what is the one freedom of response you still possess? Death is the ultimate frame that gives every moment its weight and its worth. The Stoics practiced Memento Mori not as a morbid obsession with the end, but as a vibrant technique for clarifying life. By consciously remembering that you will die, that your time is finite and irrevocable, the temporary sting of public shame or the discomfort of exile shrinks to its true, insignificant size. This awareness acts like a mental sieve, filtering out the trivial anxieties of reputation and status, leaving only the essential pursuit of virtue and purpose behind. It forces a simple, piercing question. If this were my last day, would I be spending my energy on this resentment, this fear, this longing for approval? Marcus Aurelius instructed himself with this very clarity, writing, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He was not being dramatic. He was installing a constant, gentle urgency into his mind, a compass that always pointed toward integrity. We see this transformative power in the stories of individuals who receive a terminal diagnosis. In an instant, the nagging worries about a career slight or a social faux pas evaporate. What rushes in to fill the space is a profound focus on reconciliation, on love, on creating something meaningful with the time that remains. The noise falls away, and only the signal of a life well lived is left. This is the liberation Memento Mori offers, a chance to live with that same lucid priority without needing a crisis to trigger it. If you knew for certain you had 1 year left to live, how would your response to your current problems change? Would that social media scandal still feel like a life-ending event, or would it become a distant whisper compared to the work of mending a relationship or writing that letter you have always meant to write? Remembering your death is the key to unlocking a life lived without regret. A golden coin does not lose its luster when it is cast into the mud. This was the Stoic view of a just character. Even when subjected to the cruelest injustices, from wrongful imprisonment to public slander, the Stoic maintained an unwavering commitment to justice in their own actions. Why? Because acting with fairness and integrity toward others, even your captors, is the ultimate act of self-preservation. It is how you protect your humanity from the corrosive pull of bitterness. To respond to injustice with more injustice is to be poisoned by the very thing you condemn. The goal was to remain a source of reason in an unreasonable world, to be the gold that stays gold. The most famous historical example comes not from a Stoic, but from their philosophical ancestor, Socrates. Condemned to death on false charges, Socrates was presented with a perfectly arranged escape from his Athenian prison. His friends had bribed the guards and had a plan to spirit him away to safety. Yet Socrates refused. He argued that to break the laws of the city, even laws that had been unjustly applied to him, would be to commit an injustice in return. Escaping would undermine the very principle of lawful living that he had spent his life defending. His integrity was not for sale, not even for the price of his own life. He chose to drink the hemlock, demonstrating that his commitment to justice was absolute, a core part of his being that no external sentence could ever touch. For the Stoics, this was the highest expression of the virtue of justice. It is easy to be fair when you are treated fairly. The real test comes when you are wronged. How can you practice this virtue of justice, even when you feel the hot sting of being treated unjustly? It begins with a simple but profound shift. redirect the energy you would spend on resentment into ensuring your own conduct remains beyond reproach. That difficult colleague who undermines you, do you respond with gossip or with direct, honest communication? The system that you feel has failed you, do you cheat it at the first opportunity, or do you hold yourself to a higher standard? Every time you choose fairness over retaliation, you are minting your own golden character, a value that no amount of mud can ever truly tarnish. Gratitude feels like a natural response to a gift or a promotion. But in a prison cell or on a barren island, it becomes a declaration of war against despair. The Stoics mastered this shift, turning gratitude into a disciplined practice for finding light in the deepest darkness. It was their active antidote to the poison of self-pity. A man like Seneca, exiled to Corsica, did not focus on the loss of his Roman comforts. Instead, he trained his mind to feel a profound thanks for what could not be taken from him. He still had his ability to reason, to observe the natural world, to feel the sun on his face and the wind from the sea. He still had the capacity to write and to think. In a letter to his friend Lucilius, he advised giving thanks for the simple, enduring gifts of existence itself. He argued that we are wealthy not by what we possess, but by what we can happily live without. This is the core of Stoic sufficiency, the realization that you already have everything you truly need to be at peace. Your body may be confined, but your mind can still travel across the cosmos through thought. Your reputation may be tarnished, but your character remains yours to polish. This practice flips the script on deprivation. Lack is no longer an emptiness to be filled, but a space that reveals the enduring foundations of your life. A powerful modern way to cultivate this is through what we might call a deprivation gratitude list. This is not about being thankful for your car or your job, but for the fundamental elements of being alive that you almost never consider. It is an exercise in finding abundance in apparent scarcity, so let that question land. What three things which you typically take for granted can you feel genuinely grateful for right now? Is it the simple rhythm of your breath, the ability to see color, the quiet functioning of your heart? These are the unassailable treasures that no emperor, no critic, and no misfortune can ever take from you. The most powerful response is sometimes no response at all. In an age of instant reaction and public feuds, the Stoic discipline of silence stands as a radical act of self-possession. For a philosopher facing a hostile interrogator or a statesman enduring public slander, every word was a potential trap. Uncontrolled speech could escalate a conflict, betray a confidence, or, most dangerously, force them to say something contrary to their own principles. Measured silence, by contrast, was a fortress. It was not a sign of weakness or defeat, but a visible display of the inner strength that comes from total command over one's own impulses. While the mob gossiped and shouted, the philosopher's quiet dignity became a louder statement than any retort could ever be. Epictetus, with his typical focus on what we can control, gave a simple rule for this. He said, "Be silent for the most part, or if you speak, say only what is necessary and in a few words." He was not advising a life of muteness, but a life where every word is chosen, where our speech is forced to align with our character rather than our fleeting emotions. Think of a public figure today, subjected to a barrage of false and demeaning accusations. The modern temptation is to fire back on the same platform, to engage in a public spat that demeans all involved. The Stoic path would be one of strategic restraint. They might issue a single, clear statement of truth, or they might choose to say nothing at all, allowing their consistent actions over time to disprove the noise. This silence is not an admission of guilt, it is a declaration that their worth is not up for debate in that arena. It preserves their energy for what truly matters and maintains a dignity that no tit-for-tat exchange can ever achieve. So where in your own life, in your relationships or online interactions, might practicing this deliberate restraint of speech bring you more peace and dignity? Solitude is not the same as loneliness. Even in their most isolated moments, the Stoics were never truly alone. They cultivated what we might call a community of the wise, an invisible fellowship built from the writings and examples of philosophers who had walked the path before them. This intellectual companionship was a lifeline, a source of solace and guidance that assured them their values were not a solitary rebellion, but part of a timeless human conversation about how to live well. When your immediate world offers no support, you can seek out the best company ever known through the pages of a book. A prisoner in a cold cell holding a copy of Marcus Aurelius is not just reading. They are sharing a quiet moment with a Roman emperor who also knew despair, who also wrestled with fear, and who left behind a map of his own resilience. They are joining a community that transcends prison walls and the boundaries of time itself. This is the profound fellowship you enter when you study these ideas. You are not just learning concepts, you are gaining companions for life's most difficult journeys. So ask yourself this: who are the wise figures, living or dead, whose company you can seek for strength today? Whose words can serve as your invisible counsel when the visible world offers only noise or silence? Forced isolation strips away the constant noise of other people's opinions. It removes the stage on which we perform our social roles, leaving only the raw material of the self. This is the hidden opportunity within exile and imprisonment, a confrontation that, while terrifying, holds the potential for unparalleled self-knowledge. Loneliness is the painful craving for external company, but solitude is the rich state of being a complete companion to yourself. Seneca, who knew this state well, wrote from his own exile that one of the pleasures of a peaceful mind is being able to be alone with yourself without finding it tedious. He discovered that when you stop running from your own company, you meet the person you were always meant to become. This is the fertile ground from which true philosophical depth can grow, a clarity impossible to achieve amid the chatter of the forum and the demands of daily life. The modern equivalent is a self-imposed digital exile, a silent retreat where you voluntarily surrender your phone and all its distractions. In that sudden quiet, the mind initially thrashes like a fish on a riverbank, desperate for the familiar current of notifications and updates. But then it settles. Without the constant input, you begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You notice the patterns of your worries, the sources of your quiet joys, the values that lie buried under a mountain of busyness. What might you discover about yourself if you voluntarily spent a day in complete solitude without distractions? You might encounter boredom, restlessness, or anxiety, but if you stay with them, you will also find that these are just surface waves on a much deeper and far more tranquil ocean of self. For a Stoic, the only true good is an excellent character, the only true evil is vice. This single, radical belief redefines the entire landscape of human suffering. It means that every external loss, whether of property, reputation, or even physical freedom, is classified not as a catastrophe, but as a preferred indifferent. These things can be taken away, and therefore they were never truly yours to begin with. Your dignity, however, remains perfectly safe because it is rooted in something no tyrant can confiscate and no mob can vote on: the unwavering quality of your own soul. This is why virtue becomes its own ultimate reward. Acting with courage, justice, wisdom, and self-discipline is not a means to an end, like gaining praise or avoiding punishment. It is the end itself, the highest expression of a human life fully lived. Epictetus, who began with nothing, articulated this unshakable possession with stunning clarity. He said, "Not my land, but my choices are my estate. Your choices, your intentions, and your will are the only things that are truly, permanently yours." History remembers the figure of Regulus, a Roman general captured by an enemy army. He was sent back to Rome on parole to negotiate a prisoner exchange, but he was sworn to return to certain torture and death if he failed. Upon arriving, he advised the Senate to refuse the deal, arguing it was not in Rome's best interest. Then, honoring his oath, he walked back into captivity and a brutal execution. The world would say he lost everything, his life, his freedom, his future. But from the Stoic view, he secured the only thing that mattered, his integrity. He proved that his character was his most valuable possession, and he chose to keep it intact even at the cost of his body. So let this question settle in the quiet of your own mind. If you were to be stripped of all external markers of success, your job title, your social standing, your material wealth, what would remain of your character? Your current struggle is not the final chapter of your story. The Stoics endured their deepest humiliations by fixing their gaze on a horizon far beyond their immediate pain, on the legacy of character they would leave for those who came after them. This was not about seeking fame, but about offering a timeless example of how to suffer well. They understood that a life lived with courage and dignity becomes a gift to future generations, a quiet proof that it is possible to remain unbroken. Marcus Aurelius, writing for himself alone, captured this perfectly. He reminded himself to live in such a way that if someone were to speak ill of you, no one would believe it. He was building a reputation for integrity so solid that it would outlive the petty lies of his contemporaries. This is the long view, the act of planting a tree under whose shade you know you will never sit. Consider the scientist who faces public ridicule for a theory that contradicts established belief. The immediate experience is one of isolation and professional scorn, a kind of intellectual exile. Yet they persevere not for the applause of their peers, but for the truth itself and for the future humanity it might serve. Their personal suffering is absorbed into a cause larger than their own comfort, giving their daily grind a transcendent purpose. The mockery of the crowd becomes insignificant when measured against the potential benefit to generations yet unborn. This is the same fuel that powered the Roman statesman Cato, who stood so firmly for his principles that his enemies said his very death was a lecture. How might the way you handle your current challenge, with all its stings and setbacks, become a source of inspiration for someone 50 years from now? Your quiet dignity in the face of unfairness, your resilience after a loss, your refusal to compromise your core values, these are the seeds of a legacy that has nothing to do with wealth or titles, and everything to do with the unshakable strength of the human spirit. A quiet dignity in the face of immense suffering was the Stoic masterpiece. This was never about simply waiting for a storm to pass, but about learning to find shelter in the unshakable architecture of your own mind. We have walked with exiles, prisoners, and the publicly shamed, and their journey reveals a profound truth. Resilience is a philosophical project you actively build, day by day, thought by thought. The dichotomy of control taught you to anchor your energy in what is truly yours, your judgments and actions. Amor Fati challenged you to love your fate, seeing every obstacle as the necessary fuel for your growth. And the Inner Citadel showed you how to construct a mental sanctuary that no external event can ever breach. These are not historical curiosities. They are a living toolkit for navigating the modern world's own forms of exile and disgrace. Marcus Aurelius, near the end of his meditations, offered a final, unifying thought. He wrote, "The universe is transformation. Our life is what our thoughts make it." Your life in its entirety is shaped by the quality of your opinions and your willingness to accept the constant, flowing nature of all things. This single idea contains the entire practice to see the world as it is and to choose your perspective with wisdom. So as we conclude this journey, the real work begins with you. What is one principle from our time together that you will consciously practice in the coming week? Will you pause before assenting to a painful impression? Will you perform a small act of voluntary discomfort to strengthen your will? The path to an unshakable core is walked one deliberate step at a time. I would be genuinely interested to hear which idea resonated most with you. Share your choice or a reflection in the comments below, and if you found this exploration valuable, subscribe for more journeys into practical philosophy. Your own inner citadel awaits its next stronger